It was 3:12 a.m., the kind of hour where time feels broken, too late to still be working, too early to stop. I was sitting under fluorescent lights in an empty office, remoted into one of our patching servers, fingers crossed, running these VMware Power CLI scripts to patch infrastructure I didn't build. And no one really knew who actually owned it. Oh, but when it broke, everyone knew who to blame. Hi, that's me. There were no policies, no Terraform, no real feedback loops, scattered credentials that probably lived in Excel spreadsheets, and that awful pit in your stomach only cured by the vague hope that if I copied the last working command and hoped long and hard enough, maybe the fulfillment center wouldn't call me at 5 in the morning and tell me something was broken. That the difference between success and total oblivion was a comma. It's a true story. That was normal for me. And the thing is, many of us still live in that kind of normal. And that's because for us, the path to production is dark and full of terrors. It's the surprises you didn't plan for. It's the configuration drift you discover at the worst possible moment. It's the access controls, the rollbacks, and the organizational politics that turn a simple deployment into a nightmare. So how do we navigate this? How do we find a clear path through the darkness? We do it by embarking on a hero's journey. Now, sure, we'll talk about some new features in Terraform, but there's a story here. A story about the challenges that we face and the mentors we find and the new tools that we gain that help transform our dark path into a really clear one. That journey, by the way, is your journey. You are the hero who is called to bring clarity to the chaos. And like any hero's journey, it begins with a backstory. So, hello, HashiCorp. My name is Jacob Plicque. I use he/him pronouns, and for the past 15 years or so, my career has been a deeply personal journey through the infrastructure world. Starting out as your classic desktop support in the sysadmin world, working my way up into a senior SRE role, moving into a pre-sale solutions architect role, talking about reliability and chaos engineering, and then eventually, in the last several years, in a developer advocacy role, talking about observability stories and process automation. And now I'm a senior TPMM here at HashiCorp, which, if we're being honest, is just still code for I get to tell cool stories about infrastructure to people like you all. Speaking of stories, fun fact, I'm actually immersed in writing an epic fantasy novel on the side. And that creative journey has led me really deeply into studying things like narrative design, understanding how compelling stories are built, how heroes are formed, and how challenges are overcome. It's through that unique lens that I realized that there was a fascinating, often untold story right in front of us in our daily work. The story of infrastructure itself and our journey through it. So, this is me, blurred out, much less gray hair, half lit. I remember having to wave my hands in the air to get the lights to acknowledge my existence. 5 hours earlier, 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Back then, I worked overnight shifts from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And patching systems on Wednesdays by myself was just normal. Over 10,000 servers in the enterprise by one person. I didn't know Terraform existed yet. I think back then, that's right around the time that board game, Terraforming Mars, was released. That's as far as I went back then. I was running those scripts against infrastructure I didn't build and no one wanted to maintain. Because who had the time? So much so that the week before I took it over, I found out we were only patching production. Dev, QC, at least a year behind, sometimes never patched. No one wanted to own it, and production had to be patched for PCI compliance. Oh, and verification was really easy. Just wait for all the red alerts to clear, and if they didn't, log into those servers and then see what services still weren't coming up for whatever reason, restart those or the boxes again, because surely this time will be different. What's that saying about sanity? And every time something broke, I'd scramble to find the right log file, the right credential, the right duct tape. That wasn't DevOps, is what I was advertised as. But that was more like survival. It was the beginning of a classic case of on-call hero burnout. The systems worked because one person was willing to sacrifice their nights to be the hero. But as we know a lot better today, that kind of heroism isn't sustainable, and it certainly doesn't scale. The funny part, at the time, I thought I was being efficient. I got us all caught up patching-wise in those lower environments, and now I look back and realize I was being held together by institutional memory and duct tape. The systems worked until they didn't, but we weren't solving any problems. We were just surviving them. But this image, this story for many, is still today what ownership looks like. We've all been on this journey with infrastructure as code, and it felt revolutionary, right? It was our Bilbo leaving the Shire for you Hobbit fans out there. That was our moment. We were stepping away from manual commands and into a world of version control and automation. But here's the hard truth. Many teams take a few steps. Maybe they write a module or two or three, and then they go right back home to the Shire. This isn't about laziness, though. It's about exhaustion, about the fear of unknown complexity. It's about an unclear return on investment. Too many organizations started this journey over the last decade or so, but never truly committed to it. The next leap for us isn't just technical anymore. It's emotional and cultural. And we need to talk about why so many of these journeys stall out and what it takes to finally commit to that path. And we have to ask ourselves, why didn't we finish this journey? It's because it wasn't the code. It was everything that we built around it. The real problems were a lack of support and organizational safety to see it through. Who's supposed to be the hero here, really? Now, the developer's pain is the catalyst, sure, but the SRE and the platform teams are the ones who must lead the way. So this talk is about the path forward. It's not about just starting the journey, but what happens after that, what happens next. About how the newest features in Terraform are the upgraded tools that you need and the mentors that you need to overcome the next set of challenges on that path. So eventually something had to change, right? Because duct tape doesn't scale. You also can't build a sustainable business on a process that no one trusts, if the process even exists. And when things inevitably failed, it wasn't a learning opportunity like we're learning about in the LFI, the learning from incidents conversations we're having. It wasn't a learning opportunity. It was just this silent chaos. This kind of normal is what has to end. This is the point where the hero, having seen the limitations of their existing tools, realizes that they need a new upgraded toolkit to continue this journey. But again, we all took that first step outside of the door with infrastructure as code, but it didn't solve the entire problem. It gave us repeatability, but it didn't solve delivery. And many of us got stuck dealing with the monolithic configurations, the complex dependencies, and the brittle custom scripts creating chaos somewhere between merge and production. This is where the next chapter of the Terraform story begins. Again, not just about writing code, but about creating a clear, trusted, and predictable path to production. About achieving clarity over control. So, if clarity is our goal, where does the journey to achieve it actually begin? It begins with the most fundamental moment in our world, our call to adventure for every infrastructure hero. Developer needs infrastructure to ship their code. Platform team gets the call, naturally, and the way we respond to this defines everything. But that seemingly simple request is never actually simple, is it? Behind that request lies the true challenge of our journey, that beast that we all have to face. That's the dragon in our path, or trolls if you like The Hobbit. Modern applications aren't one thing. They are a complex web of these interdependent components. A request for a new service might mean coordinating changes across networking, databases, multiple application services. Trying to manage this with a collection of these disconnected workspaces is where the real terrors on the path to production live. It leads to things like drift, like errors, and painful, slow deployments. This is the complexity we have to tame. So, how do we solve that problem of complexity? How do we achieve clarity? Well, that's where the first new tool for our hero's journey comes in. It's Terraform Stacks, as you found out, generally available as of this morning. Stacks represents a powerful evolution in provisioning that directly addresses the challenge of managing these interdependent configurations at scale. It allows you to break down your infrastructure into these logical components: networking, databases, your computing platform, and then deploy these as cohesive, repeatable environments, all driven by your existing VCS workflow. So a question you're probably asking, all right, when do I use Stacks instead of the workspaces I'm already using? It's a pretty critical question. Think of it this way. Workspaces are for managing components: your VPC, your database, your Kubernetes cluster. And each is a perfect use case for this workspace. They are the individual foundational building blocks. Stacks are for managing systems. You should use a stack if you plan to deploy your configuration more than one time, like across dev, staging, and production environments. The tipping point? That's when you start spending more time wiring your workspaces together, manually orchestrating run triggers, sharing outputs with complex data sources. Heard a little bit about that from some of you yesterday. Then you do actually building it. Building anything, I should say. That's your signal. That's when you know it's time to move from managing components to orchestrating systems with Stacks. So let's take a closer look at what this means in practice. Stacks gives you three powerful new capabilities. First, you have coordinated deployments with deployment group orchestration. Second, it provides advanced dependency management through features like deferred changes and linked stacks. And finally, it's all built on a VCS-driven architecture, which means that every part of your stack is managed as code. And this is all designed to fit into the complex, secure environments that real enterprises operate in. So the stack we're about to see is connected to our VCS. And with the GA release, this could be GitHub, GitLab, Azure DevOps, or Bitbucket. It could just as easily be running on our own self-hosted agents in a private network too. This also creates a better developer experience. With a unified CLI, you can give your developers the ability to author and test stacks locally without needing to commit every change, which makes their iteration loop so much faster. This is about how we map the path forward. So let's see what that journey looks like in action. So to give you a real-world example of what this unlocks, let's look at deferred changes. For anyone who's worked with complex, interdependent resources like Kubernetes, you know the pain of a plan failing because a value isn't known yet. Stacks solves this because it can now produce a partial plan and automatically continue with those values when those values become known, turning a major point of friction into a seamless, automated flow. So in the demo we're about to see, we'll show a full Stacks workflow, and I want you to pay close attention when we start to get ready to deploy, and instead of things failing, something else happens. You'll see exactly how deferred changes turns into what would have been a failed plan into a successful deployment. Oops, I got so busy, I forgot to show you these things. But I think you get it. All right, so we're in our HCP Terraform workflow now. And we're starting a bit in medias res here with our deployment already active, because we've already pushed to get at this point. And up above, you can see that publish output block, and we'll talk about that when we get to link stacks in a second. But I want to show you the auto approval rule that we've defined around safe developmental plans. As long as there's no destruction or changes, we automatically approve that plan and move forward. And we'll see our add-ons, EKS Fargate, our VPC, our application, all on the left side, and that auto approval, as I mentioned already. And that link stack for the VPC ID a little later. So again, our VPC is already up and running, and we're waiting ever so patiently for our EKS cluster to come up. But you'll notice that we have several options here, the HashiBank, add-ons, namespace, RBAC, that instead of failing, they're just waiting for their time. We can also see our auto approval orchestrated by the rule that we said earlier. This is the link stack side. So like if you have something like a downstream stack for, say, our application security team needs to have access to our cluster via security group to do a bunch of scanning and all that other stuff, we can actually go ahead and implement that really easily. As I spill water on myself. I'm a professional. So now we have so much new that we can talk about now. We can actually deploy an entire multi-component, in this case, HashiBank application to Kubernetes in a single unified run. So now our plan and our apply is wrapping up here. And we'll see in a few minutes, a minute or two, I should say, that our plan will begin again. And since we already approved it, we actually will already proceed to the apply and start to build out the other components of our stack. Because in the old world of workspaces, everything would fall apart right about here. The Kubernetes components can't be configured until the EKS cluster exists, right? But since we have that initial deference of our add-ons, our RBAC components, Stacks understands that dependency, and instead of failing, as I mentioned earlier, it just waits. A bit ahead of myself. There we go, as we skip ahead here. And now we can see now the EKS cluster is done, and we'll scroll down here in a minute. You'll see that as the add-ons begin to spin up, and the seasonings, as I said earlier, as I said before, I should say. And we also see that the apply finished as we wrapped up earlier. The plan automatically queued and started already, as we can see there. And this will continue as long as we need it to until we have a fresh deployment of everything that we need. So, as you saw Armand announce a little earlier, Terraform Search is now in public beta. And it's highlighted in the keynote, now that you can manage all these complex workloads with Stacks, there's still the problem of how you discover them to bring them under management. This is especially true for those of us who didn't have the luxury of starting with ISC from day one. That's where the new tfquery.acl file comes in. It lets you declaratively ask Terraform to list resources with specific filters, like all running instances that aren't tagged as being managed. The Terraform query command then takes that file and can automatically generate the configuration that you need to bring that unknown territory under control. It's like actually playing a game of Risk and actually finishing it for the first time instead of flipping a table. I don't know that from experience or anything. So this is a critical step for any platform team. You have to define the unknowns to bring them under management. And once you have, you can start defining those golden paths for your developers with self-service workflows, which is exactly what Bharath and Tajitha are going to show us a little later this afternoon, actually right after this. And for those who want the full technical deep dive for Terraform Search, Cole and Garvita will have a session about that tomorrow that you don't want to miss too. So how do we keep this journey safe and compliant? By providing the guardrails for the path. In our story, that mentor is governance. And I know, boo, governance, pitchforks, torches. But the goal isn't to slow developers down. It's to give them a safe, automated path to production. We do this by solving the blank page problem. Instead of writing policy from scratch, we provide a library of wisdom with over 350 plus, I believe, at this point, pre-written Sentinel policies for AWS. And don't worry, Azure and Google Cloud folks, you are on the roadmap and coming soon, so let us know what you need. This is covering key standards like CIS and financial services benchmarks. I believe NIST just came out today. Again, not about blocking the path, but about giving your teams a map so they don't have to draw their own. This turns policy from a gatekeeper into a helpful guide for the entire journey. So, after we've given our hero these new tools, Stacks, Search, guidance around policies, the journey begins to change. The path is no longer dark and full of terrors. The experience of the developer, our original hero really, is transformed. They begin saying things like this: I get it now. I'm not afraid of this platform. I actually want to use it. That was weirdly helpful. And suddenly, that profound shift happens from friction to flow, from confusion to clarity. They're no longer just surviving the platform, they're empowered by it. So what we're really talking about today is a modern hero's journey for every platform team. We all started at the same place, a world of chaos and unknown infrastructure that was created outside of our process. That's our call to adventure. The tools we've looked at, like Terraform Search, for example, are what allow us to cross that threshold. They're the map and compass that help us define the unknown territory. And from here, the journey continues. You take what you've discovered, begin building those standardized self-service workflows, like those golden paths we talked about. And then ultimately, you return home, back to the Shire, a better place, a fully managed, auditable estate. I know, that can feel like a pipe dream. It really can. But here's a secret. Some of you in this room, and some of you watching this online, you know this to be true. You already know this is possible. It's a continuous cycle, and it all starts with taking that first step to chart the unknown. There it is. So this is where the work really, really is. Not about selling a product, no matter what it is. It's about creating belief. It's the belief from the developer that the platform has their back, the belief from leadership that costs are managed, and the belief from security that risks are mitigated. Because without belief, there's no adoption. Without clarity, there's no sustained progress. And without a compelling narrative, there's no trust. We've been having this conversation about IAC for years, and yet so many engineers still feel stuck. Infrastructure only gets noticed when it fails. That's our branding problem as platform teams. But when we make the journey clear, when we tell that story of guidance and partnership, that platform transforms from an opaque gatekeeper into a trusted partner, not a black box. This narrative clarity connects strategy to implementation. This is how narrative clarity helps the business too. When developers understand what to do and why it matters, things move faster. Not just because the tech works, but because the humans believe in it. You might be the only one in your org that's thinking this way right now. And that's okay. After all, the hero is often alone at the start, but that's where the greatest impact begins. Every movement in history starts with someone who steps outside of the norm. And you're that someone. So, what are the key lessons from our journey here today? First, to relentlessly pursue clarity over complexity. Because clarity is what reduces the cognitive load and the chaos that leads to things like burnout. Second, frame governance as a mentor, providing a safe, predictable path that doesn't require a hero to save the day. Third, and really importantly, most importantly, remember that our job is to build platforms that tell better stories. Platforms that replace last-minute heroics with calm, sustainable systems. And finally, a little homework for you. Start your next chapter. Go back to your team. Find one point of friction. Take that first step on the path to building that better system. Because the hero's journey isn't about one person saving the day. It's about building a world where they don't have to. Thank you all so much for coming on this journey with me today. Thank you. Especially since this is my first HashiCorp. I'll be putting the slides up on Speaker Deck here in a few minutes. You can find me on socials if you want to connect, LinkedIn, wherever. I'm an extrovert. I love talking about this stuff, so feel free to find me. Don't be a stranger. I'll be at the booth later this afternoon if you want to hang out. It's been a pleasure taking you there and back again. Peace out.